Hi there, and thanks for tuning in for this week's audio edition of the blog Off Grid and Ignorant in Portugal. And in the sunshine of this January day, the dispatch is called Backing Booze. Goodbye dry, welcoming back the wet. For a recovering news addict, the daily barrage of bad news breaks over me like the Atlantic waves on our wild west Portuguese coast. The inundation of daily briefings, updates and newsletters which arrive from the various trusted outlets from different sides of the widening political divide are a deluge to duck below, wait out and then resurface in calmer waters. Of course, the next swell is already building. It won't be long before another crest crashes over. Take your eye off it, and you'll be washing machined in a tumbling turmoil through the surf and delivered prostrate on the beach. The game is trying not to get washed up by this relentless surge of warmongering, right-wing rhetoric and utter indecency, mostly coming from America, and the distasteful giving of tributes to pander to a deeply flawed king. Really, Maria Corina Machado? You think he'll give you Venezuela now he's styled himself as acting president? But occasionally something pops up which makes riding the swell worthwhile. This week it was a nicely written piece in The Economist about how the business of wine reflects changes in society. It's about isolation, loneliness, and the lubricating antidote which oils the wheels of social interaction. It struck a real chord because it falls in line with what we're trying to do here, bringing interesting people together with a glass of wine, sharing a meal and a story. It reflects what we love about wine as well, and how it helps put storytelling at the heart of our off-grid lodge. Hopefully online, as usual, there's loads of photos and links and stuff. There's a link there which will take you to the full article. But if not, you're going to get the gist anyway, because I've decided to take some quotes out of the article, tease out a few thoughts, and pick it all apart. Of course, I could have chosen mixed martial arts for my news metaphor, which for some weird reason I'm now inundated with every time I dip into some passive doom scrolling, alongside an inundation of rugby tries, woodworking demonstrations, DIY tips, and Australian dad jokes. I guess it could be a lot worse. Algorithms have become our personalised shadows, following us around the metaverse like the demons of the Philip Pullman fantasy novels and TV show His Dark Materials. But nevertheless, I am slightly fascinated by the surprise flying kicks, the backhanded punches, and the sneaky use of elbows to the head in the MMA clips. Yet another good allegory for world politics. Talking of inundations, we've been having an amazing amount of rain. The 200,000 litre rainwater tank is full to almost overflowing. The lake's outflow stream is back, and we now know exactly where to put the drainage channels in the new vineyard. Although I'm still not wearing a jumper, I am from Newcastle, don't forget, the chillier temperatures mean we can put on the fire, reach for a warming Alentejo red, and let the story begin. With thanks to the anonymous Economist author of Falling Wine Sales Reflect a Lonelier and More Atomised World. The long dark days can lower people's moods, is the first quote I've picked out for the story. On the one hand, it's a great idea giving up booze for January, but on the other it is a terrible time to deny yourself something nice to warm up the longer nights, especially when the act of drinking takes you to a nice cosy bar. But straight off the back of the festive season, with bulging belt buckles, it seems like the right thing to do. The exhortations of do-gooders to forego, as the writer elegantly puts it. Anna and I have cut back this month, but more in the realisation that running a tourism lodge around wine and joining in with every guest is going to kill us pretty quickly. I've never suffered from SAD, seasonal affective disorder, the shorter days depression, but that's mostly because I've organised my life around living in places where it's still warm and sunny most of the time, like today for example. Sadly, alcohol sales are on the wane. through a combination of Gen Zers drinking a lot less, presumably as a form of revolution against the grown-ups who set such a bad example during their childhood, and the various studies citing the health detriments of booze. But the Economist interviewees say there's more to it than that. Wine's decline reflects something deeper, a fraying of the social fabric that once held Western societies together. That's what Andres Perez thinks. His family runs the Allan vineyard in Chile, which looks amazing by the way, where wine tasting is more a carefully curated social event than a lesson in tannins. I said exactly the same thing presenting this week's wine story tasting for 43 people. Well, perhaps not quite as eloquently or directly, but it's what I meant. It's less about fancy language and more about enjoying what you like. Yes, you heard correctly. Wine tasting for 43. That was a first. We had a fantastic group staying on their corporate retreat, or off-site, as we've learned the new word for it is. In collaboration with nearby yoga centre Arada, and with huge thanks to David for asking us to be involved, we hosted the Virto Education Management team for the week. Our solar system once again brilliantly navigated a full house, despite the rain, as the study abroad programme staff gathered from all over the world and cosied up in the clubhouse to hear a little Portuguese history through wine. We treated them to some of our favourites. Vicentino White Blend, a Gerações d'Italia introduction to Alentejo's amphora wine world, some Esparao Reserva and Muxau's stunning Alicante Boucher. The Allan vineyard once offered hour-long tasting sessions. Now they last 4. By the end of the visit, strangers are swapping numbers and shaking hands, the article reads. Well, we didn't quite go to 4, but the volume of participants certainly increased as the tasting went on. Anthropologists see the decline in communal eating as part of a broader social unravelling. We've loved hosting a family-style meal around a long table on the terrace when we've had the time in this first year of being open. Running this place sometimes feels a little bit like the Trump presidency. It feels a lot longer, but it still hasn't been a full year. It's been great to bring people together over a fish braai or some grilled black pork with lashings of Alentejo wine, ideally from a flagon, to get the conversations going. People across the rich world increasingly live and eat alone. As a result, more people now eat and unwind in front of screens. Now that's an easy one. We encourage our guests to the Valley to let their phones have a holiday as well, to switch off and take it easy, ideally from the comfort of a locked box. The phones, not the guests. Phil Davis, a friend and BBC cameraman from Nairobi, always swore we needed to go on at least one safari every 6 weeks to give our eye muscles a workout. After all the close-up reading we do in front of screens, he argued, we periodically need to scan a distant horizon to maintain the flexibility to switch to long vision once again. It's also great, when planning a safari with friends, to be practiced enough to know the difference between a lion and a rock that looks like a lion at 400 metres. Our views are vast. There's an old windmill on the hill over there to focus on, and we do have a few rocks that look a bit like the Iberian lynx. And of course, we've got a big library of books and shelves of games for rainy days. But of course, off-grid doesn't always mean offline, as there's always a need to keep in touch. Generation Z drink differently, increasingly seeking out quality and novelty. Tick. Of the 350 different grapes grown in Portugal, 250 are indigenous, and nothing says wine novelty more than Antavage and Orinto, Trincadeira, Tinta Miúda, and the 2 Tourigas, Nacional and Franca, obviously. Quality and novelty are a draw with young drinkers, on the basis that, and allow me this, the reason the hipster burnt his mouth on coffee was because he wanted to drink it before it was cool. Ba-bum-ching. Alentejo is, of course, home to the original natural wine. Talia, or amphora wine, made the way the Romans made it, and made that way ever since they arrived. And it's perhaps the main reason our lower, or Baixo Alentejo, has been awarded European City of Wine for 2026. For some people, drinking is an isolating addiction, but for most, it's a social indulgence, and that, increasingly, is what people are missing. I've always loved a bit of social indulging. I have been known to socially overindulge, but only occasionally. And that's the inspiration around a few of the things we're planning for the first part of this year. The main one is the wine retreat we're doing with the Hutchins Wine Academy in May. People are signing up for that already, and it'll be a lot of fun. 70 wines, some amazing meals, and winery adventures, and you'll leave it tasting wine like a sommelier. Our detox-retox days of exercise followed by alcohol are perfect for February and March, when the shoulder devils and angels both get their way on the same day. And that plan to run a regular open house wine tasting every Friday is taking a step closer to becoming a thing. We might even host something fun on Sunday, February the 1st, a sort of goodbye dry and welcome back wet rest of the year. Let us know if you're interested. The EU is providing funds to uproot grapevines in order to reduce the bloc's wine glut. Of course they are. So obviously we are planting half a hectare while everyone else is getting money for pulling it up. Speaking of which, I really must get my wellies on, take to the field and start counting up how many plants we need. I really don't trust my geometry or that of ChatGPT. Thanks for listening, and if you're interested in any of the above, go online, go to our website, email us at welcome@valleyofthestars.co.uk, come and pay us a visit. It's lovely here. Speak to you next time.